So, Minister, I want to say thank you for agreeing to have this conversation. And we have had so many things happening and popping up in the traditional media space about what WASA is doing, about the improvements in the water sector. But we have not had that big picture understanding of everything. So I'm glad you're here, and I want you to start by telling us the genesis of all of this, your appointment as Minister of Public Utilities and being thrust into that subcommittee.
Into the deep end of the sea,
The
as they
deep
say.
end.
So thank you very much for that opportunity. I think this is happening at a very timely manner because so much of our projects that we have started, that we have conceptualized over the last 3 to 4 years, they are starting to bear fruits. Some are now getting off the ground. People are seeing WASA's presence in so many communities all over Trinidad and Tobago. And what I've seen is a coming together, and that gap that existed between WASA and its customers is getting shorter and shorter because WASA is now in the communities with the Ministry of Public Utilities supporting, working towards improving people's access and communities' access to water and addressing some of the infrastructure issues and other issues that may have been contributing over the years to communities not having a supply of water. This journey started, as you've asked, in 2020 when I was asked to run for the Lupino-Borneo West seat in the general elections of 2020. And I successfully contested the seat for the PNM and subsequent to the general elections and the PNM being re-elected to continue governance, I was appointed Minister of Public Utilities.
I want to jump in there. What was your initial thought? I mean, you would not have had the intimate knowledge of the organization.
No knowledge whatsoever.
There you go. But you would have been a customer and you would have been hearing what other customers feel.
Yeah.
What were your initial thoughts on that appointment?
Fear, trepidation, uncertainty. But I know myself, and I know that I had the opportunity to give it my best shot and do whatever it takes to understand and to unravel what is taking place in the water sector. And whilst I'm doing that, take into confidence the people of Trinidad and Tobago. What was interesting about the appointment was the fact that I came out of a campaign where most of the communities in the constituency that I campaigned in Lupino-Borneo West complained. Their main concern was water. I saw customers with literal tears in their eyes with respect to not having water. And some of them I remember and I will never forget. I remember there's a customer in La Florissant whose mom was very ill, and I walked up to her gate with the campaign team to ask for her vote and ask for her support in the elections. And she told me, while she has no difficulty in giving me the support, she had no reason to, because she had a sick mom inside of her home. And interestingly, she had a bucket, an empty bucket in her hands. And she said, I just came out by a neighbor to get water because I don't have water to take care of my sick mom. And she broke down in tears and just turned away and walked in her home. And I felt her pain. And all I could have done at the point in time was to tell her and to assure her, if you decide to give me your support and I'm successful in the campaign, I will use my authority as your member of parliament to advocate on your behalf, to improve your circumstances. That was one situation. Then there's another area in Sherwood Park, close to the Arima side. And the customers there told me that they didn't have access to water for over 5 years. I couldn't understand why a community didn't have water for 5 years. I mean, it was shocking. I know we had problems with water. We have problems for a reliable supply of water. But people not having water for 5 years I was taken aback. And I asked the question, what was the reason? there was no pipeline in the ground, you never had access to pipe-borne water. And they said, yes, at some point in time they had access to water, just for one reason or the other, they had no water. And it has been like that for years. And then in Five Rivers, I had similar people expressing similar concerns. So after the elections, I was successfully elected. And to my shock and amazement, the Prime Minister appointed me Minister of Public Utilities. So it was now my responsibility not only to respond decisively to the concerns that I experienced firsthand on the campaign trail. It was my responsibility to address those concerns, but not only in the constituency of Lupino-Bonner West, but in communities all over Trinidad and Tobago. Such a monumental task that was placed upon my shoulders. I am not an engineer by profession. I am not a water sector specialist. I don't know anything. I didn't know anything about the water sector. I've never visited a reservoir. I never visited a water treatment plant in my life. And same for TNTech, electricity. I am an attorney at law by profession. Nothing to do whatsoever with engineering or the water sector. I have a first degree in law, LLB. I am a graduate from the Hewing Law School, and then I studied my master's in law at the University of the West Indies with a focus on corporate commercial law and labor law. Nothing to do with the water sector. And
that must have been an intimidating.
Fear. I didn't know how to start, basically. I didn't know how to start. But as a newly minted minister, my responsibility, as I see it, is to get down and utilize my skill by working in the public service and my experience in working in the public service, dealing with similar types of matters, very difficult matters, understanding that once you properly diagnose the problem, you can recruit the requisite skill sets in the country to help you come up with solutions to respond to the issues. And that's how I see it. But after my appointment, the first cabinet meeting, the Prime Minister appointed me to chair a cabinet subcommittee that had the responsibility of looking into the operations of WASA and determining whether or not the authority is properly discharging its mandate to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and to make recommendations to the cabinet that would result in the total transformation of the organization. I was given 3 months to undertake this particular exercise and to complete my report. So that was in October, and I had...
October 2020.
October 2020, correct. And I had by December to deliver that report. So that was my first major assignment, having been appointed Minister of Public Utilities. On that cabinet subcommittee, you had Minister Young, Minister Penelope Beckles, Minister Frankie Khan, deceased, God rest his soul, and you had also Minister Camille Robinson-Regis, and I as the chairman. So
how did that feel? You, by description, you would have been
the most junior minister. I was the most junior minister, yeah. Leading a team of very experienced, heavy hitters in the politics.
But again, that speaks to the kind of support you would have had around.
The kind of support around me, of course. So I wasn't fearful because I relied heavily on their support and their experience in putting this report together. So I was introduced to the ministry and some of the senior technocrats in the ministry, the deputy permanent secretaries, senior public officers, and then the management of WASA, the board of WASA, and the task of the cabinet subcommittee, the terms of reference, and everything was designed, and I immediately get down to work. So in the first 3 or 4 months, my main responsibility was to complete this investigation and this report to be able to make critical recommendation, because you're talking about your water utility agency. You don't have another water utility agency. So you need to properly diagnose the problems so that you can make effective recommendations to the cabinet. You don't want to mislead the cabinet, you don't want to misdiagnose the problem, because if you do so, it can result in the cabinet taking decisions that will not result in the transformation that is so desired, that has spoken about for years and decades in Trinidad and Tobago. We did not meet our December deadline because of the magnitude of the task and the large volumes of information that came our way. And I must say that we had senior executives in WASA coming forward, giving their perspective and presenting reports. You had members of the board, then other members of staff, stakeholders. We interviewed a wide cross-section of people. We collected and gathered data and reports that we had to go through to be able to understand what was happening. The report was completed in January, and it was a voluminous report, right? And the report basically, unfortunately, recognized that WASA was not delivering on its mandate. You had financial problems. The utility company was bankrupt. So the utility company was not in a financial position to deliver upon its mandate. It was overstaffed. That overstaffing issue was something that was addressed and discussed in several reports. It was not the first report that discovered that WASA was overstaffed. It was perhaps one out of many reports done by the IDB, done by CAF, independent consultants over the years. So you had the overstaffing issue. And then you had the issue of the state of WASA's infrastructure, which to me was a very telling and profound discovery. That we visited several of WASA's water treatment plants, its wastewater plants, its wells, its pumps. And Wendell, I can tell you, I was really shocked to see the state of some of WASA's infrastructure, which coincidentally contributed to the amount of disruptions that the authority experienced on a daily basis, which contributed significantly to disruptions taking place, people not having water, your wells were in a state, there was no plan with respect to increasing water production. There wasn't even a strategic plan for WASA. So the subcommittee's report determined that WASA was not delivering upon its mandate, and the transformation required the government to be disruptive in terms of reorganizing the company. It called for the reorganization of the Board of Commissioners, the reorganization of the management structure within the organization, as well as the need to invest over $1.5 billion to start that will rehabilitate WASA's infrastructure to be able to stabilize and improve the supply of water.
So you've just bridged for me the purpose of the subcommittee.
That's correct.
And you have already said what that first step would be. Mm-hmm. I want you to paint the picture for me what the completion of that first step looked like back in 2021. So we've submitted the report in January 21. How long did it take to get that to that point where you could visualize and articulate stage one?
So it took about 4 months to complete that report. The report and its findings were accepted by the cabinet, and the Prime Minister determined that it is not a report that is going to be shelved. It is not a report that is going to be kept away or as a secret from the people of Trinidad and Tobago. So I had the responsibility of laying the report in the Parliament, and the report was forwarded to a Joint Select Committee of Parliament, and it was subjected to further interrogation by a Joint Select Committee of Parliament. I had my views on the way in which it was dealt with. Quite frankly, let me put on record that as Minister of Public Utilities and as the chair of the Cabinet Subcommittee that put that report together, I was very disappointed in the manner in which the Joint Select Committee dealt with that report. The report was politicized by some of our political opponents. They did not see it as an opportunity for sober reflection as a country, that the water sector needs an intervention. It needed an urgent intervention because all of our citizens have a stakeholding in this. And perhaps this is an opportunity where we need to put aside the politics and put aside the noise and the allegations and counter-allegations. And let us sit as a population and dissect and analyze this report so that we can assist the government in coming to the right solutions in improving our water sector. If you listen to that, the Joint Select Committee hearings, all you would hear is ramblings. All you would hear is accusations. I would have witnessed where senior executives of WASA were accused of all manner of things before the Joint Select Committee. I would have witnessed the board, the commissioners on the board, being accused of all manner of things without members of the subcommittee getting an opportunity to really delve deep into the findings of that report. So as far as I'm concerned, the Joint Select Committee wasted a precious opportunity to get down into that report and to assist the government as a stakeholder to come up with solutions to fix our water problems.
How did you move forward?
How did I move forward? I didn't allow myself to be distracted by it, and the government did not allow itself to be distracted by some of the foolishness that was being discussed in the Parliament around that report. So coming out of that report, the Prime Minister put together another cabinet subcommittee that was responsible for implementing and coming up with a transformation plan based on the findings of that report. So you had a report, a recommendation. The report called for transformation, wide-scale transformation, leadership reorganization of the thing. It also called for the injection of over $1 billion to in water production, water stabilization, water improvement, refurbishment of WASA's infrastructure, getting more water, automation, and what have you, retraining of staff. So another cabinet subcommittee was put together on this occasion, chaired by Minister Penelope Beckles, who is now the Minister of Planning and Development. And that cabinet subcommittee was responsible for putting together a transformation plan for WASA. It took another year to come up with that transformation plan because, again, it's a water sector. It's a company that has over 5,000 and 5,000 employees. It's a company that's with infrastructure all over the country. So it took quite a lot of time to come up with a transformation plan. Luckily, that transformation plan was accepted, and the government decided to put together an implementation strategy for the transformation of WASA. So
I'm just marking the timeline. We are now in 2022.
We are now in 2022, yes.
Yeah.
2022, going to 2023. The focus was now the putting together of a transformation plan that will be approved by the government for implementation.
Now, a lot of this concept of transformation has been bandied about in our media spaces, very much aligned with loss of jobs. What does transformation mean to the minister? What does transformation mean to the government of the Republic of Trinidad?
You see, in Trinidad and Tobago, we have a media that is not interested in facts. We have a media that is just interested in bad news and interested in retrenchment and sending people home because that is what sell their newspapers. That is what will cause people to listen to their radio stations or television station. Anything that is good, that is directly associated with transformation, the media in Trinidad and Tobago is not interested in that. So every time that there is an opportunity for me to discuss the progress that we are making with respect to getting new water, bringing water to people for the very first time, reducing the leak backlog in WASA from 5,000 now down to 500, anything that is relating to improving its levels of service, expanding the amount of communities that are getting water for the very first time, and all of the other improvements that we have undertaken that were directly related to that first Cabinet Subcommittee report as what was needed in order to transform the organization, in addition to restructuring and reorganizing at the management level. The media was only interested in one aspect of transformation or restructuring, which is the part where 2,500 people will go home, or you will slash your management from 426 to 200. That was all the media was concerned about. So everything that was taking place that resulted in WASA making incremental improvement in the way it treats its customers and the way that it operates, the media had no interest in it. They had no interest. You call a media conference to to commission a new water treatment plant that would improve lives, to give people water for the very first time and what have you. They only came there to find out when you're sending people home.
Which would have been the immediate questions as soon as the official ceremony
Exactly.
was over.
And that would make the news. I mean, this is not an opportunity for us to talk about the media. As far as I am concerned, they have their responsibility. As far as I am concerned, they need to check themselves, because they don't understand that they have a role to educate and inform citizens and not to pursue agendas and your own narratives. Our responsibility is to put all of the facts before the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and those facts must be grounded in truth.
And there is a role for the media to play in terms of uniting persons with the development of the sector through information.
Correct.
And I think this conversation would go a long way in providing at least that contextual framework so that citizens, no matter where they're located, no matter their level of service, could understand that their experience is still anchored in something developmental.
Correct.
So let's go back then to transformation. What is transformation to the minister?
Transformation to the minister is evidence where citizens believe and can feel that we have a utility agency that is responsive to their needs. Be it a request for a water truck supply, a response to a disruption, having a reliable service, and whenever I need to speak to someone within the agency, they are accessible. Transformation for me is a utility agency that understands its role in the provision of a vital utility to the people of Trinidad and Tobago, and behaving and conducting itself as though that they are aware, it is aware of that central and most important responsibility that it carries for its customers, the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Transformation for me is also an agency that is repositioning itself to deal with some of the looming crises, for example, climate change and other challenges, to be able to be responsive to those challenges so that when those challenges become a reality, the utility agency can still continue its mandate to deliver services to the people of Trinidad and Tobago. That is what transformation means to the Minister of Public Utilities.
And let's talk at another level, at the governmental level. What's the policy that drives this view of the minister?
The policy that drives the view of the minister is anchored in the report that was laid in the Parliament, the transformation plan that was put together by, or rather approved by the subcommittee, another subcommittee of cabinet, that was worked upon by the Board of Commissioners and the senior executive of the Water and Sewerage Authority, and as was also approved by the Cabinet of Trinidad and Tobago. So the views of the minister, whilst yes, is important, it is anchored in policies that were approved at the level of the Cabinet, the Board of Commissioners, as well as a Cabinet subcommittee that had the opportunity to look at all of the issues that we're talking about and approving a plan of action that will bring about the desired results that we want. and that will improve the lives and would ensure water security to the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
You've just spoke about a number of issues that fall under that banner of transformation. Let's take a walk through some of them individually. One of the flagship programs that has emerged, and quite successfully so, would be the C-WIP program. Tell us about the C-WIP program and where it falls under that banner of transformation.
So C-WIP is C-W-I-P, right?
Yes.
C-WIP,
C-W-I-P.
C-WIP, that's correct. Community Water Improvement Program. That's a very good question, because I'll tell you how it started off. I recognize that whilst it was very, very fundamental to put together a transformation plan for WASA, and that report that the Prime Minister asked me to put together in 2020, the transformation plan, the implementation of transformation, getting the requisite financing to conceptualize projects, design projects, implement projects, all of these things, Wendell, they take a lot of time. Now remember, people don't appreciate that. Citizens don't appreciate all of the background things that must be put in place to get projects off the ground.
I want water now.
But I want water now. I have been suffering for water for decades. I need water now. So you can't blame citizens for that, because when you get up in the morning, you want to ensure that you have water in your tanks, water in your pipe, to take care of your children, cook food, and go about your daily lives. I instructed my team that whilst all of the things that we put together are necessary and must happen in order to reposition the Ministry of Public Utilities and WASA to transform, to bring about the necessary transformation that we need to come up with some short-term solutions to deal with some of the crises that existed at the time, especially targeting communities that had serious problems with water or even never had access to water. I come from a rural community. I didn't have the luxury of pipe-borne water in where I live, so I know about going to a river to fetch water, going to a spring. I know about that. And I brought that experience to my office as Minister of Public Utilities, because you have so many communities where people can identify with that way of living. Not in the majority, but you still have communities, on the fringes, on the extremities, as we call them, unregulated communities, squatter communities, people who live on hills where the infrastructure was never designed to get the utility services or the water to their homes. So the Community Water Improvement Program was conceptualized to allow WASA and the Ministry of Public Utilities to respond to those challenges whilst we undertook the monumental task of transformation. So you work on the big ticket item of transformation, but you're also responding to the needs of communities who want water and want it now and cannot wait for transformation to finish. It's going to take years for them to get water.
So is it fair then to say that the C-WIP program is positioned as a bridge between the immediate reality,
that's right,
and forms part of your transformation plan?
Transformation plan. Because the transformation plan talks about the need for investment at the short-term level, the medium-term, and the long-term level. It's talking about over $1.5 billion. That's quite a lot of money. And you have to look at your capacity, you have to look at implementation strategy, you have to look at your procurement strategy. All of these things take a lot of time. But C-WIP, as you rightly put it, was a gap to be able, and an opportunity to be able to respond to some of those critical areas, crisis areas, for us to provide relief to some citizens as you work on the bigger, on the broad-term policy objectives of transformation at the management level, at the organizational level, and some of the bigger projects that would obviously take some time. And I'll tell you this, it has been a tremendous success so far. we were able to complete over 75 projects over the last 3 years. It has never even happened in the history of the water sector, not even when WASA had access to billions of dollars in the past to undertake, large projects that should have impacted people at the community level. So billions of dollars were spent, but yet still people in Paramin, people in Coruscant, people in Sangre Grande, in Church Street, parts of Tobago, in Charlottesville, Hope in Tobago, Chauvin Road, all of these people, parts of central Trinidad, Tabaquite and Siparia, didn't see the benefit of the billions of dollars that was spent and that previous governments boasted about spending. Some of these communities remain without a water supply. C-WIP was designed to make the necessary interventions so that these communities can get a supply of water. And over the last 3 years, we formed small teams, we empowered team leads within the organization who never had the opportunity to lead anything or to design. So we were able to move the 24/7 level of coverage, Wendell, from 32% to 61% of the population getting access. WASA to 24/7 level of service.
And that's over the 3 year span.
Over the 3 year span. Thousands of citizens who live in communities on the extremities, especially in rural communities. The latest community was in Coruscant, who never had access to pipe-borne supply of water, got water for the very first time. And anybody who wants to doubt the impact of C-WIP, they can go to the people of Church Street in Matura, go to Pine Avenue in Sangre Grande, they can go to Upper Paramin, they can go to Granville and Cedras and Icacos, they can go there, go to parts of Tobago and Hope in Tobago, and Chauvin, parts of Chauvin Road, the extremities of Crown Point, go to parts of Charlottesville, and you talk to the residents, and you ask them, have you experienced the positive effects of C-WIP? And you would hear from them. So if you don't want to believe what I'm saying today, you are free not to believe what I'm saying. But go to those communities and hear the testimonials of some of those citizens. 74 or to 75 projects were executed. We constructed over 15 new booster stations, 15 booster stations. We had over 50-something pipeline projects where we extended WASA's distribution system. We replaced high leakage pipelines. We constructed a new water treatment plant in Lupino. We constructed a tank farm in Upper Paramin. All of these things we were able to do whilst we work on transformation. Because of C-WIP, I would have personally witnessed WASA workers becoming close to people who live in those communities. We would have seen where people from those communities, they got employment opportunities coming out of this program and from the individual projects. And the relationship between WASA workers and the communities was strengthened. And the people from those beneficiary communities had a completely different concept and mindset where WASA and WASA workers were concerned. Isn't that evidence of transformation?
Sounds like it to me.
So therefore, when the media or some segments of the media would have or want this country to believe that transformation and restructuring is about people going home and people losing their jobs, transformation for the Minister of Public Utilities is communities getting access to water. Do we still have much more to do? Of course, certainly. You're talking about years of neglect. And more you do is the more you see, people coming forward and asking for their community to be included on this C-WIP train that they have seen and witnessed being rolled out all over the country. And whilst, yes, we are happy that we completed over 70 or 74 projects successfully, we are looking forward to expand that to maybe another 30 communities in the 2025 financial year. And I want to thank the Minister of Finance, and the Minister of Planning and Development for supporting the Ministry of Public Utilities and WASA in approving this line item in our development program, because had it not been for their support, it takes money to undertake these projects. WASA on its own didn't have the financial resources to undertake these projects.
And I don't think the average citizen understands how that works, you know. We want water, full stop. And I'm glad you touched on it. Give us a little peek into what that conversation is like in terms of generating the funding to make this happen.
The first thing we have to do as Ministry of Public Utilities is to justify to our critical stakeholders in the Ministry of Planning and Development that has the responsibility for putting together a development program for Trinidad and Tobago for implementation for all government ministries. And the Ministry of Finance's role is to get the requisite funding to undertake these projects. So the first hurdle is the Ministry of Public Utilities approving the projects, asking for a line item to be created in the development program, and then Ministry of Planning's responsibility is to look at it and see and determine whether or not it falls within the development goals for Trinidad and Tobago.
And so far we've had 75,
So 75.
The answer is in there.
And they would have noticed the successful rolling out of these projects because they have been observing it, and some of the staff, they live in the communities that that benefited from these projects. And the Ministry of Finance now would have approved the funding to make these projects a reality. And over the last, from 2020 to 2024, we were successful in getting, approximately $50 million a year to undertake some of these short-term projects. And that's the reason why this project and this program was successful.
And I'm glad we're talking funding. $50 million a year in the wider context is merely scratching the surface in terms of dollar value.
That's correct.
Tell me a little bit about our engagement with the IDB.
Good. So, as I've said, we identify short-term projects in small rural communities to that these projects can yield results quickly and get people a supply of water, stabilize your water distribution system, and bring about improvements to people's lives. But there's a wider framework that need to be satisfied, which is the refurbishment of all your plants I talked about earlier on. Your plants, the WASA plants, have been in a state of disrepair. All of WASA's major water treatment plants like North Oropuch, Guanapo, Freeport, Navet, Hillsborough, just to name a few, these plants, since they were constructed, were never refurbished. So they were all producing and they were all operating way below their design capacity, in some cases 30%. Decades later. So whilst you had an expanding population, new communities building through HDC and private development, your industries and your commercial spaces are expanding, and expanding demand, your water infrastructure is going in the opposite direction. Your plants are in a state of disrepair because you don't have a preventative maintenance program to keep them operating at optimal capacity. So that obviously would require expenditure to the tune of hundreds of millions of dollars to restore those plants, not new plants, to restore those plants back to the design capacity. But then you also need to construct new plants to meet the growing demands of some of those communities. So the IDB program has three major components: water stabilization and improvement. And under water stabilization and improvement, those plants that I've mentioned that have not been refurbished over the last 30 years, we are refurbishing those plants. North Oropuch, Guanapo, Freeport, Navet, Hillsborough, just to name a few, right? So that's 5 major plants to be refurbished. Then we also need to increase the production of water. So 2 areas have been identified for the construction of 2 new plants, which is in the Santa Cruz area a large river, Green Meadows River, the WRA would have conducted its assessment, and it was determined that the Green Meadows River in Santa Cruz has the capacity to produce over 4 million gallons of water per day.
Which is enough to serve.
Which is enough to serve and to meet the demands of Santa Cruz and in the areas of San Juan and Bogmalashes and some of those areas.
But there's a current supply.
I will explain that.
Yeah.
I will explain that. So we're going to build a new plant. The procurement process is way advanced, and I expect that in the month of June, a contractor will be on board, mobilized to begin the construction of that brand new plant in Santa Cruz. And then you have the Goldsboro area in the eastern part of Tobago, another river that has the capacity to produce, based on the WRA's assessment, approximately 2 million gallons of water per day. So that is new water coming into the stream. So you have customers who would be directly impacted from the increase in production directly related to the plants in Santa Cruz and in Goldsboro. But what is interesting is those customers who would experience the benefit indirectly. So you ask a very good question. Where is the water from those areas coming now? In Santa Cruz, the vast majority of Santa Cruz water comes from the Caroni water treatment plant. So the water is pumped from different stages, different boosters to the people of Santa Cruz. So the people of Santa Cruz, yes, you have some wells in there, but those wells cannot meet your demand, your current demand, and therefore water has to be imported from all the way from the Caroni water treatment plant behind the old airport, stage pumped at different points to get the water into your homes. When this new plant is constructed and commissioned, and I pray that that happen before the end of 2025, Santa Cruz will become self-sufficient in terms of its supply of water from its own river, the Green Meadows River, and the authority will no longer need to export millions of gallons of water from the Caroni water treatment plant to get into some of those areas in Santa Cruz and environs. The authority can now redistribute that water to unserved and underserved communities in Central, South, and even along St. Augustine and Tunapuna. So whilst the plant will be constructed in the Santa Cruz area to benefit the people of Santa Cruz and environs, the people of St. Joseph, Tunapuna, St. Augustine, parts of Central Trinidad and South Trinidad will feel the indirect benefit because the authority can now redistribute water to this area. And the same thing for Goldsboro in Tobago. All right? So water from the existing plant will now go towards some of the communities with an increase and an improved schedule by the construction of this plant. And this is exactly the strategy that we have been using all along to localize the sources of water so that the authority can redistribute the water from its current and older plants to unserved and underserved communities. So that is just one component of the IDB loan. Then you have the drilling of 6 wells, all right, in Freeport, 3 in Freeport, 1 in Clark Road, in Penal, 1 in Tucker Valley, and the other in Chatham, in the Point 14 area. And the Chatham plant is also up for major upgrade and refurbishment under the IDB program. There are 2 components of that IDB program that is very interesting. 2 other components. One is technology. Under the transformation and the report of the Cabinet Subcommittee that I alluded to earlier, they talk about that WASA, we need to leverage on technology in the water sector. WASA is operating blindly. Too much of your operation is manual. And in your manual operation, you are vulnerable to sabotage and practices that are not good. So,
and even the lack of data, and the lack of information.
Exactly. So you don't know how much volume of water is needed in Belmont to meet the demands of Belmont. You don't know the volume of water that is needed in Icacos and in Siparia, in Penal, in Sangre Grande, in La Joqueta, in Maloney. You don't know because you're not measuring the water from its production source to its distribution source and what have you. So under the IDB program, the we are going to be investing, or rather we are investing a lot in technology to move WASA to evolve into a technology-driven organization. Transformation, where the authority will have a smart water network. So whenever you have a disruption on your plant, whenever you have disruption at your pumps and booster stations, whenever you have major leaks, all of these things will now be detected at a central command system, which we call your OCC, or your Operational Command Center, so that the utility company can respond almost in real time. Whenever there is a disruption on its system that would prevent it from responding to some of those disruptions and improving its response time so that customers will not feel the impact of that disruption. Because we are now moving into a fully automated distribution and transmission system, it puts data into the hands of managers so that they can manage effectively and manage with information and manage with data.
And in real time.
And in real time. So a key component of that IDB loan is to create that smart water network where a lot of your transmission and distribution system will be metered by bulk meters. We are going to be deploying data loggers so that we can measure your pressures, especially on some of the hilly terrain. Right? We are also putting together a central command system where it is going to manage your entire transmission and distribution network. Some of your major water treatment plants will also be fully automated, where there is no need to send people manually to check very important things and data sets, etc. All of these things will now be managed from a centralized system so that you know exactly what is taking place on your system at any point in time. So once we continue with this drive, we will approach a time where it will be a surprise to hear a community going without water because a pump has gone down for 5 weeks and 2 months and what have you. All of that data would now be available to decision makers so that you can respond in real time to this disruption. And the result of that is an improvement in the levels of service, as well as WASA improving its relationship with its customers. So that when people call your customer center, the customer relations officer will be able to explain to them what is the issue and give them a timeline that the utility company would respond and resolve the issues, and when they will see a normalization in their levels of service.
I wanted to delve a little deeper into that so that we truly understand what that means. A lot of the pipeline network, the distribution network, it's located in cross-country locations, off-road, forested areas. Tell us how a leak is currently detected on a system like that.
A very good question. And you have different avenues to discover that leak. Sometimes you can only discover that leak if someone calls and detects or sees the leak. A customer or member of the community, they will call and they will report the leak. Sometimes a community or the upper parts or the extremities of that community would experience not having water, and the technical officers will be forced to go out and conduct physical checks on the lines to determine, all in the forest and in the bush,
several kilometers of lines.
Several kilometers of lines, to see if there is a leak, to detect if there's a leak, as to whether or not that would be the reason why people are not getting a supply of water. All of these things are done manually, and it takes days, sometimes weeks, to discover and to diagnose a problem. And during that time period, several homes may not be getting water, and in some cases, maybe communities not getting a supply of water.
And sometimes they still do, I would assume.
Sometimes they still do, but you might get reduced pressure. And you still, exactly, the pressures, the low pressures may not be determined, or the community might still be getting water, but you might be losing hundreds of thousands of gallons of water as a result of that leak, and you don't know. On a daily basis. Automation would give you the ability and the tools to detect when you have such a leak on your system or leaks on your system, so that you can respond to them, plug those leaks, and save the utility company, hundreds of thousands of gallons of water that is so desperately needed to provide to unserved communities. So there are a lot of benefits to be had in digitizing your network, automating your network. It gives you the utility company, the data and the resources that they need to make decisions in real time. But it also improves the level of service because WASA now has available to it data so that it can communicate with its customers.
Well, that can't be a one-sided equation. What's the role of the citizen, the customer?
Well, again, information is important. One of the challenge faced by customers is the fact that they can't get through to the utility company. So when customers want to make a report of a leak, they're not getting through. Or you don't have the digital platform, the modern technological platform that will allow that seamless and that symbiotic relationship that is needed between the utility company and its customers.
And I think a useful intervention would be the current survey.
Exactly. So that survey is very important because WASA unfortunately doesn't know a lot of its customers. And for many reasons. People may have illegal connections, WASA itself may not have done the groundwork in order to have those customers properly registered. You have the issue of unregulated development as well. And people who are using WASA water, but they're not paying for it because there's no record of some of those customers on its system. And oftentimes, these customers, whenever there's a disruption on WASA's network, they cannot access a Trop 1 supply of water because they do not have valid accounts. All right? And based on the policy that WASA follows, in order to be entitled to a Trop 1 supply of water, you need to have a valid account in order to verify whether or not you are a valid customer. So this survey, this customer survey that is being done, it could not have come at a right time. But it is linked to transformation. Because that is exactly what the transformation plan and the cabinet report that we laid in Parliament spoke about. All right? So WASA needs to know who are its customers, where they are located. So whenever they have issues, the utility company can design an appropriate response to be able to address the needs of those customers. So once you have data as to where those customers are located, when they call into your customer contact center can see where they are located from the technology, and they will be able to explain to the customers what is the reason for the disruption in service. Okay, we are sending a Trop 1 supply, we are sending the appropriate officer to be able to address your concerns because we are seeing where you are located, we are seeing that your community, as it is right now, there's a pump that went down in the booster station that serves your community, and the level of service would improve significantly because you now have data and you now have information as to where those customers are located. So in that context, I am asking citizens to please participate in the survey. It is very necessary. You have a right to demand a better service from the authority. The authority is doing its part to improve itself, to transform itself, to provide you, the citizens, with a better service. But it also requires your participation and your support by providing the authority with the relevant data concerning your account and where you are located. And if you do not have, for one reason or the other, a legitimate account, this is an opportunity to legitimize your account with the authority, and the authority having data on its system with respect to your to you as a customer, so the authority can respond to your needs whenever you require a response from the authority.
And the survey exists in a non-punitive environment.
Of course, we need the support. So we don't. The authority is not penalizing people or forcing them to participate as much as we would like them to participate voluntarily. So it provides different modern avenues through technology that is your online platform to participate in the survey, to fill the information sending out. But also we will be sending out a number of field officers to the various communities to speak to the customers all around Trinidad and Tobago to get the requisite data. But we're asking people to participate on the online survey because it means that we can complete this process within a short period of time as we seek to transition into a modern, technologically driven authority.
I want to take another look under this banner of transformation. We have connected C-WIP, we have connected the IDB. What about the other programs, the NWSIP, the Well Development Program, the capital, CAPEX funded programs as well?
So what we did also in support of the transformation plan, we needed to come up with a capital investment program for WASA. Because the transformation plan will talk about broad-scale transformation. The capital investment program will go into some more details with respect to projects and the funding that might be needed for these projects to be undertaken. So WASA, for the very first time, put together a capital investment program in 2022. And that program is what drives all of the various projects that we are talking about. C-WIP, the Northwest Water Improvement Program, the National Water Sector Transformation Program, even the very IDB loan. The projects that were conceptualized to get access to that IDB loan, those projects were lifted from that capital investment program. So even though they may have different names and different acronyms, they all form part of WASA's capital investment program to improve the levels of service. The Northwest Water Improvement Program was a program designed to treat with water challenges in Northwest Trinidad. Northwest Trinidad is, spans from Mount Hope in the east straight down to Chaguaramas in the further west, including Santa Cruz and parts of Lafayette and Maracas and Blanchisseuse. Quite over 350,000 customers or citizens that live in Northwest Trinidad. The WASA and the Ministry of Public Utilities recognize that a lot of the plants in Northwest Trinidad and the booster stations have been operating way below capacity. As a matter of fact, Wendell, we discovered that you had over 100 pumps that were supposed to be on booster stations to provide the people of the region with a supply of water were down. So we needed to get those pumps back up and running on the booster stations. We needed to refurbish some of those old booster stations. We needed to refurbish some of the old water infrastructure like the storage reservoir at Nags Hill and Picton, that is now the Morris Marshall Reservoir. We needed to replace aging pipeline and high leakage pipeline, and what have you. So that project, that program started in 2020, late in 2022 into 2023. We are now in 2024. And I can tell you we are at 70% or inching closer to 80% execution strategy or rate for this program. And we intend to wrap it up by the end of 2024, early 2025.
So this is a program with a sunset?
It is a program with a sunset. It was not intended to be there permanently or perpetually on the development program because the various components of the project and what was needed was quite clear to us. And we therefore engage in robust procurement, robust project management. And I'm happy to tell you that the program as it is, is 75% completed, and we expect to complete it by the end of 2024, early 2025. With over 350,000 citizens in Northwest Trinidad will see an improvement in their supply of water, right? And that is not funded under the development program. A key part of that program is the refurbishment of the Maraval Water Works. It's one of the oldest plants in Trinidad and Tobago, I'm told, by the WASA operators. And the Maraval Water Works is going to be undergoing some major refurbishment. All right, I was advised that the project has since started, and once it is completed in 5 or 6 months, the people in Maraval and Highland Park and lower down Port of Spain on the Saddle Road and environs St. Clair will see a vast improvement in their supply of water once that project is completed. We have completed a number of booster stations in Caranange, in La Puerta, Diego Martin. We have undertaken, pipeline replacement on Mokorapo Road and Mount Coco Road, parts of Goodwood Park in Caranange and Diego Martin, part of Maraval, Santa Cruz. All right. So this project, another successful one that is already yielding a number of benefits. And I can tell you as Minister of Public Utilities that the kind of disruptions and complaints about disruptions that that came to my phone in 2020, 2021, I don't see those complaints anymore, because we have upgraded the infrastructure and we have improved the level of service. There's some areas still, like in East Port of Spain, in Belmont, in Mover, and those areas, that require, some intervention, and that is where the remaining 20% will be focused. So towards the end of this year, we have some major upgrade work to do in Basilon Street, in the Besson Street area, in Mover, in Laventille. A lot of focus will be placed there because the infrastructure there has not been upgraded in years for various reasons, and we will be working towards improving the infrastructure so that the people there can have a supply of water. Under that project or program, we refurbished completely the Picton Reservoir, the two beautiful tanks in Picton, which we renamed the Morris Marshall Storage Reservoir. We upgraded the booster station with new pump sets, the Palm Trees booster station as well, and some of the surrounding water infrastructure. We will also experience an improvement, or rather upgrades. So the people in Laventille and East Port of Spain, in Belmont, upper parts of Belmont, Lea and Hill, will see an improvement in the supply of water. We're also going to be drilling a new groundwater well by President's Grounds there in St. Anne's, and we expect that well will be producing over 300,000 gallons of water on a daily basis, and the people of Cascade and St. Anne's and Honolulu will see another dramatic improvement in their supply of water.
We have looked at the wells program now, and I want to link that to a conversation about climate change, especially in the dry season. We have seen so much difference in our weather patterns, movement of rainfall, where rain once traditionally fell. We have seen a shift over the last couple of years. How has the well development program been able to provide some resilience against climate change? And to add to that, what is the policy moving forward in terms of us building resilience nationally against climate change?
The topic of climate change is no longer an academic discussion, or I would say a sexy topic. Climate change is upon us. Climate change is real. Climate change is taking its toll upon us as a nation, a region, and a world. And it requires urgent and decisive action. As a water utility company, WASA stands to be directly impacted by climate change. And to put it in context, let me say, for those who are listening, that 60% of WASA's water comes from surface water sources, that is rivers and streams. Our major water production plants get their water from surface water.
The most vulnerable source.
Which is the most vulnerable source of water. Our storage reservoirs in Caroni Arena, Hollis, Hillsborough, in Navet. We have seen now how they have been impacted by this drought-like condition, the heat and the evaporation that is happening right now. These storage reservoirs have all been impacted significantly, and as a result of that, WASA is losing 36 million gallons of water per day. WASA does not have 36 million gallons of water per day to meet the demands of its customers. What can we do about that? There's few things we can do. We can build resilience. We can throw our hands up in the air and say, there's nothing we can do because this is the weather, this is climate change, and we have no control over that. Or we can buckle down to continue our drive towards building resilience. Luckily, we have been doing that because we anticipated that we are heading in that particular direction. And that's the reason why we're happy to say and to report at this point in time that we have drilled over 11 groundwater wells in strategic areas around the country, in Freeport, in Mayaro, Tobago, Aruca, just to name a few, Valencia. And as a result of that, WASA is producing 4 million gallons of water more. And that 4 million gallons of water remained intact during this drought-like condition, whereas our rivers and our reservoirs have been declining in production. Had we not drilled those 11 wells and producing that 4 million gallons of water per day, it would not have been 36 million gallons of water not available to WASA, it would have been 40 million. And the level of disruption would have been very, very profound and felt all across Trinidad and Tobago. The communities that are directly impacted by those wells, I have done my investigation, and based on the reports that are available to me, those communities have not felt the impact of this dry season because the wells remain very, very resilient to the dry conditions. Luckily, we already have a plan and we have started the procurement for the drilling of 23 new wells in 2024 and 2025, which should give us an additional 8 million gallons of water if we get the amount of water that we expect from those wells. So we have targeted areas like Palo Seco, in Granville, Icacos, in Mayaro. We will continue to drill wells in Freeport, in Valencia, in Toca Valley, in other parts of East Trinidad, targeting communities that are vulnerable to climate change. When those wells come into production, we will have further resilience, on the system to allow WASA to continue to provide water to its citizens despite falling production at the surface water plants. It will not solve all your problem because your surface water sources tend to give you more water than your groundwater sources. Groundwater is just more resilient to extreme weather conditions, but it would still improve WASA's position and give it the level of resilience and robustness that it requires to be able to respond to harsh conditions like what we are experiencing right now. The second component of the IDB loan, I'm going to take it back to the IDB loan, is on building water sector capacity and climate resilience. This is very important because in our negotiation and our discussions with the IDB, we recognize climate change to be one of the greatest risks that all water utility companies will face in the next 10 years. And therefore, the time has come for decisive decision to be made to make all utility agencies climate resilient and to have a plan to be able to respond to climate emergencies and climate change on its infrastructure. We have put together in 2022 an integrated water resource management policy as part of our preparation for building capacity in the water sector to respond to the challenges of climate change. That policy has been approved in 2022, and the IDB, under the second component of the loan, is now funding or providing the financial resources to the Ministry of Public Utilities to implement an integrated water resource management program that would regulate the conduct of all of our stakeholders in the water sector so that we can manage our water in a responsible manner, because it is not the business of WASA alone. WASA is just one stakeholder in that whole water ecosystem. We have Ministry of Agriculture, we have Ministry of the Environment, we have the Ministry of Housing, we have Ministry of Works and Transport, we have our private contractors, private citizens. All stakeholders must play their role in a well-managed and regulated sector so as to manage our water resources. The IDB is now funding, under the second component of the loan, the implementation of integrated water resource management as we seek to build resiliency. So it is not only about drilling new wells and looking for new water sources, it's about building capacity and repositioning and repurposing the Ministry of Public Utilities and WASA to build institutional capacity and to fund a program to allow the utility company and Trinidad and Tobago to respond to the rot and the challenges of climate change.
And I think that would also create the platform for an open, honest, and sometimes difficult conversation on water conservation.
And that is where it is heading. Because it cannot just be the construction of new plants as we are doing, which is necessary, it's very important, and the drilling of new wells and the refurbishment of plants and what have you. We need to adopt that serious approach of water conservation at our individual levels. Because from a per capita perspective, if you have to go on that alone, Trinidad and Tobago is overproducing water, given the size of our population. WASA is overproducing water. If we were to accept that WASA is producing over 240 million gallons of water per day in the rainy season and 215 gallons of water per day in the dry season, according to the United Nations, that is enough water to provide for a population of 1.4 million citizens. But that is not the case in Trinidad. What we have in Trinidad and Tobago is an unequal and sometimes inequitable distribution of that very precious resource, because it is dependent on where you live. If you live on a lower elevation as opposed to people who live on higher elevation, if you live in a developed community as opposed to an undeveloped community, if you live in a squatter community as opposed to a regulated development, all of these factors contribute to whether or not you have an efficient supplier of water. But if we regulate this sector, we regulate the expansion of illegal settlement and persons who continue to build on hills, which poses a serious challenge to WASA to provide water to some of these citizens. When you regulate developers and you regulate persons who engage in deforestation and all of these things, and some of the illegal activities at some of our rainforests, all of these sectors, they need to be regulated properly so that we can have and we can protect our water resources, so that water, the limited resources that we have and the limited availability of water that we have, can be put to proper use so that we can exist and live. So the integrated water resource management policy is one that we have approved. It is being funded by the IDB loan under the second component. The building of our resilience and our response to the ravages of climate change, all of these things are being done as we speak.
We often tend to put a little pressure on WASA, and sometimes as we should.
And sometimes it is unfair.
And sometimes it is unfair. What about the citizens' responsibility? And I'm coming to you now to talk about the fact that citizens in Trinidad and Tobago pay much less for their supply than what it costs to produce the said supply. Where are we in terms of addressing that imbalance?
It is something that at some point in time we need to address. Politicians, especially politicians who do not carry the responsibility and the burden of governance, they use that as a political weapon to attack a sitting government, hoping that it stirs the passion of the society and get the society so riled up and turned off from a sitting government that they use the issue of how much we pay for water as a political weapon to play games and to play politics. And as a result of that, it is very difficult to have distilled, insightful conversation on the issue of how much we pay for water. Trinidad and Tobago has the lowest rate for water almost the lowest rates for water almost in the Western Hemisphere. To operate WASA, it requires an injection of maybe $2 billion, 1.2 or 1.3 from the state to allow you to treat the water, pump the water, transmit the water, distribute it to citizens. WASA only contributes, out of that $2.2 or $2.3 billion, WASA only contributes about $700 million. Because the rates that the utility agencies collect, the utility agency collect for the water it produces is simply not enough. It's only $700 million. That $700 million is not even enough to pay your desalination bill. The $700 million that you collect in water rates is not enough to pay your desalination bill. So you need the bill out of the government to do that. You need the government support to pay your employee bills, to pay salaries. You need the support of the government to pay, to purchase chemicals to treat your water, to refurbish your pumps, to refurbish your plants, to undertake capital investment, to expand and to improve your levels of service. If you don't have the support of the government, WASA doesn't have the authority and does not have the capacity, financial capacity to do that. Ideally, what you would want is a utility company that is in a financial position to be able to meet its expenditure, which includes its operational expenditure to provide the people of the country with a supply of water on a daily basis, and perhaps the government only funding capital projects. That is the model that most water utility agencies around the world aspire to achieve, where it meets its operational expense and its expenditure, and the government only contribute towards its capital expenditure to expand and to improve its levels of service. But WASA is far from that. And therefore, with all of the challenges that is now before the utility agencies brought about by climate change and other challenges, it is going to cost hundreds of millions of dollars more to position the company to respond to those challenges. So the $2.3 billion I'm talking about now that is required for WASA to operate under present circumstances, it can easily go up to $3 billion or over $3 billion if we have to position WASA to respond to the challenges of climate change. Where is that extra money going to come from? The government certainly is not making the money from its revenue streams, so the money has to come from somewhere. And the only option that is available to us, based on all of the advice being given to the government and to the RIC, is to listen. You all can't be serious. This is what they tell us. You all can't be serious. You are operating in rates, 1993 rates. Things have gone up exponentially from 1993 to now.
The expansion of the network.
The expansion of the network, the expansion of the population, the cost in materials, the cost in maintenance, all of these things have gone up. So we have to get serious as to where this money is going to come from, because you government doesn't have the financial resources or the resources to fund that. So where is the money going to come from? You haven't had a rate review in 1993. You certainly can't. You, WASA, can't operate from 1993 rates, and you have to get yourself together to recover your costs from the production of water from your customers so that you can fund your operation. And by funding your operation, you would be able to meet the demands of your customers. It can't be the conversation. It is not a sexy conversation. It is not a good conversation coming from the mouth of a population, but I'm very comfortable in speaking the truth. I go to bed comfortably by speaking the truth, so I can just imagine how many people will be cussing the Minister of Public Utilities by hearing that. But that is all well and good. But I will not apologize for speaking the truth. The truth is that whilst you rightly make demands on the utility agency, Trinidad and Tobago has the lowest rates for water, and those rates cannot sustain the industry. It cannot sustain your water sector, and your water sector will never be stabilized with those rates. Because the money that the government had at its disposal 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, that is no longer available.
You have the C-WIP, which was the first salvo at it
That's
to
right.
address the immediate need.
Immediate needs.
And then you had different buckets of activity. IDB programs, well development program, the capital investment program, automation, leak reduction,
That's right.
a whole host of activities happening under that umbrella. Once we get the authority to that place of development that we would like it to be, who's going to govern it?
And that's a very important question, because the job of the Minister of Public Utilities is very temporary, and there's a timeline. The Minister of Public Utilities, there will be a Minister of Public Utilities, but it will not be, and it may not be the person of Marvin Gonzales. Marvin Gonzales was just given the opportunity to run the operations of the ministry for a period of time, and most importantly, to put in place a transformation roadmap for the organization. WASA is just one agency, so you have TNTech, SWIMCall, and all of these, TT Post, and all of these state agencies. So therefore, you need a cadre of managers who understands the need and what is required to continue that roadmap and that journey of transformation. Transformation may never end. Every organization must always be on a journey of transformation. There is no organization that would reach at a stage or a juncture where they would say we don't have anything to do, let us just enjoy where we are and not prepare for the next 2 years, the next 5 years. There must always be preparation for new challenges. So whilst yes, we are at a pivotal place in the evolution of the water sector and the evolution of WASA as an organization, we need a team of managers who will build on the foundation that we have set over the last 3 to 4 years to continue to repurpose, reposition WASA to be a utility agency that is forever transforming, forever evolving to meet the changing demands and the changing attitude of customers, and being responsive to those new dynamics that will always come its way. Because the water sector is a dynamic sector. You have climate change, you have extreme weather patterns, be it rainy season, dry season, and as the weather changes, the utility agency must be robust enough to make the necessary changes. So we need managers who have a fidelity to the authority, must be loyal to the authority, regardless of whoever is in power, regardless of race, religion, geographical location. Managers who understand their role where water is concerned, and ensuring that we have plans and programs to not only expand water availability to the population, but ensuring that we have reasonable and reliable access to that vital commodity of water, and working with all of the other players, the Regulated Industries Commission, the RIC, which is an independent regulator, the other government agencies, the private sector, everyone that has a role to play in that very important ecosystem of water. Managers understanding their role and ensuring that the authority is working with other stakeholders in that ecosystem so as to provide the people of Trinidad and Tobago with water security.
How close are we to assembling and installing this cadre of leaders for the authority?
We are very close. The recruitment exercise for the top tier leadership is completed. We are waiting the approval of the Ministry of Finance for their remuneration packages, because based on the system that we have in place, the Ministry of Public Utilities is not the ministry that has the responsibility for approving the compensation packages, or the Board of Authority doesn't have the authority to approve their compensation package. So it is before a subcommittee of the Cabinet chaired by the Minister of Finance, and I expect very, very soon that Cabinet subcommittee, that is called the Human Resource Advisory Committee, will complete its assessment, will subsequently give the green light to the board to engage those crop of managers. I expect to have that very soon, and once that is completed, those managers will take their position, and their responsibility will be to continue the transformation roadmap that was approved by the Cabinet and the board for the authority. It is, note what I said, a transformation roadmap. It takes time. It will take the next 5 years to continue. But whilst it implement the new managers, the new executives, implement the transformation roadmap for the authority, it has to continue assessing the environment, the ecosystem, so as to make changes as you go along, based on new challenges that might certainly emerge as we continue our journey of transformation and bringing water security to the people of Trinidad and Tobago.
And I think that speaks to why the search for those individuals was so extensive in the first place.
It was extensive. They were put through a very rigorous process. My understanding is that some of those managers will be recruited from within the organization, people who have spent, who are employees and managers who would have spent quite a significant amount of years by working in the authority. So some of those managers are being recruited from within the organization, and then you have some managers coming from outside of the organization who would bring to bear their experiences in working with other utility agencies, and who would have undertaken successfully similar types of transformation in other water utility agencies. So all of that will be brought to bear on a crop of managers who we expect to work cohesively and as a unit to continue the transformation roadmap that has been started by the current Board of Commissioners and the interim management team that we have in place.
You have painted quite a large picture, and a comprehensive painting it is, where you spoke about your beginning, and what the state of WASA was then. We then identified the transformation as a vehicle to get us to a future state. From where you currently sit, could you describe what that future state should look like?
The future state of WASA is going to be one that is driven by technology, is one that is going to find its place in a ever-evolving digital space, one that is going to leverage on some of the opportunities that exist in the digital world, and where all of its operation will be placed within a smart network with employees who are retooled and employees who are reskilled to be able to operate in that new and changing, evolving environment. One that is always responsive to the needs of its clients and its customers. WASA must see itself as one that is vital towards responding to the needs of its customers where an important commodity is concerned, that is water. We cannot function in our schools, schools cannot function without water, hospitals cannot function without water, public institutions cannot function without water, homes cannot function without water. Water is a vital commodity for us to function as a people and as a nation. And therefore, WASA must see itself as being in a position, a very, very good position, a blessed position, to be able to ensure that we have this very important commodity so that we can function as a nation. But as we do that, we must be prepared to take on the challenges, and that will continue to come our way through climate change and through digital transformation. All of these things will affect our way. We have artificial intelligence now playing its role in the operation of so many organizations, not only in the private sector, but in the public sector as well. We must not run away from it, because it will come running after us. Because if we run away from it, there will come a time where we will not be able to function without it. So we have to open our doors and see what we can do now to leverage on the benefits of some of these changing scenarios. So artificial intelligence is something that we have to open up our doors to, because I believe whilst yes, there can be certain vulnerabilities and disadvantages, there are a lot of opportunities that could be harnessed if we embrace it in a responsible manner. And therefore, I believe that once the authority opens its doors to all of these opportunities in a changing environment, utilizing technology and digital transformation and changing the way in which we do things and looking for ways to forge a close working relationship with all of our citizens, I think we are very close to that era where citizens can feel a sense of pride that we have a water utility agency that we are all proud of and that is responsive to the needs of all our people.
Final question. You shared a very intimate story about that lady you visited in your walkabout and her parent, for whom she was the primary caregiver, and the water challenges there. As Member of Parliament and subsequently Minister of Public Utilities, have you had the opportunity to address the concerns of her and that area?
That's a great question. Whilst yes, I worked and continue to work a lot at the national level and all over the country, dealing with, as best as I can, the water challenges faced by numerous communities and bringing water for the very first time, I never lost my focus on my constituency. And that is the reason why very early in my tenure, I was able to, through the support of the utility agency, to construct a new water treatment plant in Low Pinot to improve the supply of water there. Some of the infrastructure challenges that we had in coming off of the Hollis system, we were able to invest significantly in improving the infrastructure by the construction of new booster stations and drilling of new wells in that Aruka area and Arima area, and the construction, or rather the purchase of new pump sets to ensure that our booster stations operate optimally. I am happy to tell you, Wendell, that most, if not all of the communities that face challenges in 2020, they are now enjoying a more reliable supply of water. And in the next month or so, we will be launching the Aruka Water Improvement Program, where a very, very promising water source coming out of the Lupino River will be dammed, and we will be looking to expand the Aruka water treatment plant to allow it to treat an additional 1 million gallons of water per day. And that additional water in the Aruka area would be distributed to communities like Windy Hill, Edna Hill, La Florissant, Borneo West, parts of Five Rivers on the Aruka, Old Road, Foothills, and some of those neighboring communities, creating a buffer and creating further resilience from the Hollis system, where that water, additional water from Hollis, can be redistributed to areas in Valencia and Arima and parts of Malabar that have been impacted by some of the challenges. So the Aruka area will build its own resilience based on a water source that is available there, and I look forward to that. The vast majority of my constituency will see a further improvement in their supply of water, and I look forward to that project being completed by the end of 2024, early in 2025. So when I hope to walk in the next general election, I will not see tears flowing from the eyes of so many of my constituents, but I would hear directly from them the improvement in that they have experienced over the last 5 years.
Minister,
Thank you
for
very
the
much,
conversation.
and thanks for the opportunity. I appreciate it.